Yo, what is up, guys? It has been a long time since my last part. It is part 11 now for What If Asta was Meliodas' son. If you guys, read the title or whatever, I don't know. But anyway, it has been a long time, so if you guys have not, make sure to go up here to the top upper right-hand corner, and you'll be able to find a playlist with all the previous parts of the series, which will catch you up to where we are today, going into the Forest of Witches arc, which is an arc you guys have all been excited for a long time, and I am excited to deliver to you. So I hope you guys are ready and excited for this. Anyway, enough of me stalling. Let's actually get into this part for What If Asta was Meliodas' son. Last time, Asta and the Black Bulls had a party, which was their celebration for having beaten the Undersea Temple, as well as the Black Bulls, namely Asta's participation in the fight at Kiten against the Diamond Kingdom, who was attacking the Clover Kingdom. Asta had learned that his arms were effectively unhealable. Even his mother of the goddess race could not seem to heal this curse. That was just how deeply rooted in his demonic side of his arm it was. And she couldn't use her goddess side magic because it could hurt her son, so there was really nothing she could do. Asta went back to the Black Bulls' hideout pretty dejected, and once everyone at the party knew, everyone was pretty down and depressed about it. Vanessa, though, had an idea. Now, getting back into today, Asta has woken up after having done 1,000 push-ups last night and was ready for a new day. Ready to do his morning workouts, he heads downstairs looking for breakfast, but strangely, no one else from the Black Bulls is around, except Captain Yami. Captain Yami? Where is everyone? Asta would ask. Yami would then point out that they all went out to go look for cures for his arm. Asta would feel all 7 of his hearts beat. They're all doing that for me? Asta would cheer as he looks up smiling, thinking, wow, I must have made some really good friends, huh? Mom? Dad? Asta thinking about the memories of everything he remembered from the 7 deadly sins, his dad's friends and close comrades in battle. Maybe the Black Bulls are like my sins. Asta would smile as he looks up to his captain, Captain Yami, and says he should go and make sure that their efforts aren't wasted. And so Asta would head out to go and do his morning workout. Asta then going outside would find Noel and Finral. Asta would listen in and hear what they were saying, as Finral and Noel talk about how everyone went off to different locations to find out how to heal Asta's wounded arm. Noel and Finral would also talk about how Asta had helped them in the past to keep fighting, and how they had pushed them to grow further beyond and break their limits. And now it's time for them all to pay back what he had done for them, to him. Asta leaves and then feels like he's about to cry, having this much emotion that he hasn't felt in a long time. Having just heard yesterday that not even his mom, who is a brilliant healer, could fix this. Those guys. Asta would scream as he starts doing laps, running around the hideout for the Black Bulls, training his magic as he uses his own magic to increase the gravity around his feet by pushing more magic power down to his legs, making it so that it would be hard to run. Asta, using this self-imposed limiter, would continue training throughout the morning. Yami, looking out and seeing everyone in his squad working so hard, would then smile, laughing as he says, maybe if their squad put this much effort into their normal work, they'd be the top of the Magic Knights. Outside, Finral then suggests that they go to a place that might be able to help. Noelle declares, saying that she has somewhere else to go, and he can go wherever he wants to by himself. Noelle would make a sound, and then she tells him where she wants to go. Finral would be wondering why she wants to go there, and also wonders where Vanessa might have gone. Elsewhere, Vanessa finally arrives at a large door. Its wood heavily ingrained and clearly showing signs of age. It would have a strong magic power flowing all the way throughout it, like a barrier. Vanessa would then breathe in as she then yells out, I've returned. As she screams this out, the door would begin to hinge itself open, as we can hear the large metal brass hinges clanging, the rust now opening and dusting themselves off from the force, as a huge swarm of birds begins to burst out of the door and drag Vanessa inside. Meanwhile, Noelle and Finral arrive at the home, which Finral comments about. People here might know a way to cure Asta. Noelle heads in to find a naked man who she would then attack, screaming and telling him to put some clothes on. Two women then rush into the room, who Noelle greets them as Domina and Mariella. After a brief argument between Domina and the naked man, who we now are introduced to as Fonzo, Noelle then tells them what happened to Asta. Noelle asks if they may know of a way to help Asta, which Fonzo says that he does not know, but Domina says that the queen of her hometown, the Witch's Forest, might be able to do something. Noelle asked about the place, which Domina tells her about the Witch's Forest, this being a land owned completely by witches, ruled by the Great Witch, who's hundreds of years old and super powerful from what she remembered. Finral wonders if Vanessa might have actually gone there. And to their surprise, Domina would tell them that Vanessa and her are both fugitives of the forest because they left, so there's no way that Vanessa would ever go back there. Domina also says that Vanessa was one of the most important people to the queen, and if she did go back, there's no way she's ever leaving again. Domina would then comment on how dangerous that forest is, saying that if they really want to go, then it'll be a risk for all of their lives. Noelle hardens her eyes as she thinks that if there's anything they can do, it'll be this, saying that she'll be doing it. Finral would be shocked, gasping, "Really? Are you serious? Did you not hear how dangerous she just said it was?" Noelle would turn, asking if he's not going to be coming then. Finral would gulp, saying, "Well, yeah, I guess I'll go. For Asta." Noelle would nod, as Fenzel and Mariella would also say that if they're really going to insist on going, then they should definitely come with, since they were the only ones to have helped them when they had first escaped the forest. Anyway, back at the Black Bull's base, Asta is still exercising when suddenly a portal is created. Fonzel, Finral, Mariella, Domina, and Noelle appear out of it, walking out into the field. They quickly see Asta, who's still running, and head out to tell Asta that they'll explain everything to Asta where they're going later. Asta having a small idea that they're going to be heading somewhere to fix his arm, which would get him pretty excited. At the Witch's Forest, Vanessa meets with the Queen. The Queen, looking down at her daughter, would feel only one thing: disappointment. I guess she hasn't mastered it yet. How sad. Guess my little experiment failed, she'd be thinking, hoping that her having allowed Vanessa's escape would have been the very thing to allow Vanessa to bloom into her full potential. The Queen tells Vanessa that the plan has now fallen short because she left. Vanessa telling the Queen that she only came back to learn how to dispel ancient curses. Outside the Witch's Forest, Asta and the others finally arrive, a huge portal forming in front of the great door, which Vanessa herself had just entered moments before. At that time, Donna would tell them that the Witch Queen can survey the entire forest with her magic, and they're going to have to use cloaks with her magic to protect them from her gaze. The group would then cover themselves with cloak, Asta pulling it over himself with his one arm, as they then enter the Witch's Forest in two groups. Once they're inside, Noelle would look around, spotting a golem, a magical creature remotely controlled, much like a robot. Domina would explain how the golems work and their purpose is to protect the forest, while the Queen and her witches don't have to fight so much. Anyway, suddenly, one of their cloaks would fall off. This would be when the golems would turn, sensing them, as they started to attack the now intruders of the forest. Everyone begins to run as they quickly start rushing towards the Queen's palace, Asta ripping open his angelic wing, as well as the others now hopping on magic broomsticks and making a getaway, as they now fly towards the castle, using Finral's magic to boost their speed. The group would slam into the castle, Asta now breaking through the wall with his wing as he lands to the ground, deactivating it, with everyone now behind him, thanking him for the quick entry. The golems would turn away from the castle, going back to the forest, as they are automatic after all. Asta, with his group now inside the castle, would decide to go look for Vanessa, as they quickly rush to where the Queen's palace main hallway would be, with the Queen's throne. Once they enter the throne room, they would find Vanessa unconscious on the floor, with the Queen of Witches standing over her looking down at her failure of a daughter. Asta yells to the queen to leave Vanessa alone as she's bending down, prepared to stroke her hair. The queen would then look up, sharply responding, saying that it's her duty to discipline Vanessa for leaving. And that didn't even resonate to Asta. He had no idea. There's no way that someone would do that to their own kid just because they wanted to leave. Asta says that he doesn't care as he charges towards the queen. Fenrir would create a portal and Asta would jump through it, appearing behind the queen. Asta would then quickly pull out of his grimoire Lost Vein as he slices it at incredibly fast speeds. As she sees the blade, she'd be kind of shocked and also impressed, now knowing exactly who this is, having met the owner of that blade many years ago. Asta would slam the sword without any anti-magic or any magic of any kind directly into the queen, but the queen would simply block with her pinky finger, her nail being enough to stop Asta's attack. Asta would get pushed back by wind as he takes the sword with him, cutting into the ground to stop his pushback. The queen would look down at her nail, noticing a cut into her fingernail, smirking and thinking about, this kid's pretty strong. The queen would look up and comment that Asta appears to have something rather unique about him, having noticed already an odd power within him, this not being the magic of his father that she was rather aware of, but a different demon. Of course, the queen doesn't allow Asta to know that she is well acquainted with Meliodas himself, but she decides that she'll keep this information to herself for now. The queen, commenting this about his odd power, would then notice his other arm, which was completely disabled. That's surprising, she'd be thinking, knowing that Asta's mother was from the goddess race. Should have incredible healing power. So that must have been why she wanted to learn about ancient curse dispelling. The queen would comment about how Asta's the one that Vanessa was talking about, and how Vanessa would become the queen's slave, unable to leave here, if she would heal Asta's arm for him. The queen would smile as Asta looks up, looking down at his unconscious friend. Suddenly, before anyone can say anything, the queen would sense something along with Asta, feeling bloodlust from all the way over here. What is that? Asta would be thinking. Outside the forest, two armies are approaching it. One from the Diamond Kingdom, and the other being the Eye of the Midnight Sun. The queen would smirk and then shows them the armies, using her magic as she can show her unseeing eye. Everyone would be watching as they see the two massive armies approaching. Asta would actually point out Fauna and Mars, recognizing them as he points them out on the crystal gem view. Outside, near the Eye of the Midnight Sun's army, Fauna is then told that Asta and the queen are inside the forest, which Fauna would then use a spell in order to break through the foliage and burn it all down. The queen would comment about how strong this fire spell was, stating that she might not be strong enough to defend the forest. Vanessa, still being unconscious, remembers that when she first met Yami, and sees the memories of him. Thinking about Yami having invited her to the Black Bulls and seeing everything, meeting everyone together. Suddenly, Vanessa would wake up as she sees Asta and everyone else. Vanessa would look up, her eyes meeting Asta's, as she says that she found a way to heal his arm. He'll be able to use now both of his arms again, she says. Asta would look at her hard, as he would then say that he'd rather have no arm at all than Vanessa becoming the queen's slave. Vanessa would look up, seeing that there was a deal that they were talking about, as she realizes what the queen actually wants. She would again get into an argument with Asta continuously refusing. Asta says that they still have one last method. Asta undoes all the bandages on the angelic half of his arm. He'd pull out then, using Lost Vein, and use anti-magic, covering the blade as he then slams into his arm from the blunt side. Asta would feel pain, but nothing would happen. The curse would be far too deep-rooted for it to be disabled from such light anti-magic. Vanessa would scream for him to stop. Vanessa telling Asta that she can't lose any teammates, she can't lose any friends. Sometimes, Asta, your power won't be enough. Even though you're strong, you need to rely on everyone, okay? Vanessa would tell him that this is the only thing she can do. This is all she can do to save him. Asta would look up, saying that he doesn't want to lose any of his friends, and he'd rather fight with his arm like this than not be able to fight at all with her. Asta decides to try it again, as he then slams the sword again into his arm, feeling his bone crack from the pressure. Maybe if I stab it, Asta would think. No, everyone would yell, Vanessa agreeing with them, saying that he's insane. Noelle then comes up with an idea. She says to the queen that if she heals Asta's arm, then they will all help to protect the forest. The queen then decides to agree to this plan and heals Asta's arms, casting a blood-red spell, as she then covers Asta's entire body with it. Now, knowing for certain with her magic scanning him, this is indeed the half-demon, half-god child, Astaroth, the prince of heaven and hell. She would be extremely pleased, noticing his anti-magic swords, which are from him. Another being that she was very well aware of, who was, as far as she remembered, a monster just like Meliodas was. Meanwhile, outside, the two armies which were about to enter into the forest to attack it would suddenly be shocked, as the forest would be healing. What's going on? They'd be so confused, as all the foliage would begin to automatically heal. This amount of magic it's impossible. Not even the queen should have that much power. Fauna would use more fire trying to burn it, but it was healing faster than she could fix it at this point. The queen, sending her newfound forces out, would now be thinking of a plan on how to obtain both Vanessa and this powerful child, along with those anti-magic swords he possesses. The queen would then use her blood magic, having completely healed Asta. At this point, Asta would feel his full strength having returned, as he pulls out his second sword, clenching his fist, saying he's all ready for battle. He turned his sword now towards the door and turns back to his teammates, saying he's ready for them to go. Noelle, Finral, and Vanessa would be happy that Asta's got his body back, and now everyone was ready to finally fight off this threat and defend the forest. Asta says that he'll hold up his end of the deal and says thanks for healing his arms. Fonzo tells Asta that he's so happy that Asta's arms are finally healed, and now he, along with Domina and Mariella, are going to face the Diamond Kingdom's army, which Asta says sounds fine and try not to die. At the battlefield, Fauna continues trying to burn down the forest, but it seems to be getting even more resilient. Why? Why? They couldn't even seem to scratch it, and the queen would know why. Anyway, the golems have now come from inside the forest out and are beginning to attack the armies. This actually giving enough time for the forces from the Black Bulls as well as their allies to make it to the edge of the forest and actually assess the battlefield before they charge headfirst in. As Asta arrives at the battlefield, suddenly pressure in the air from his magical power begin to pressurize and crush the enemy forces. What is that? His magic power would be so strong, and even though they couldn't sense it as magic power since it was on a different frequency, as I mentioned multiple times before, the sheer pressure and gravity of his mana would be enough to make the enemy feel the pressure on their skulls, almost like being deep under the ocean. As Asta now flies over into the sun, they would look up, seeing the two dark and light wings. Asta looking down as he tells everyone to stay back, saying that he'll take them all out in one shot. Asta would pull out his huge blade, the Demon Slayer's sword, as he prepares to cover it with anti-magic. Asta would then rush down flying as he pushes his body to its absolute fastest, thinking, black meteorite. Asta would slam into the ground, and as he uses his anti-magic, pushing it across the battlefield, trees and grass would die, having their mana sucked out. However, all of the enemy soldiers would also have their mana drained, feeling their stamina having been halved. Asta would now go into battle mode, pulling out and switching his sword to Lost Vein, which gives him more speed and agility. Asta would move forward at blinding speed, cutting and destroying the enemy magic knights and all of their mages. Asta would be like a demon, literally. Everyone would be shocked seeing Asta actually doing this, having ripped through the enemy forces at such vigor. Even his allies would be rather intimidated, but now they'd remember the sheer power that Asta had, remembering that he actually could match with the leader of the Eye of the Midnight Sun in terms of power. Everyone would be shocked, laughing and cheering, as Asta was actually destroying the crowd. It seemed like everything was almost over. Even Fauna and her salamander had been defeated already from Asta's just pure strength. And so Fauna wasn't as big of a threat in this version as she was in the original, with Asta not really needing any support, aside from Noelle using her water to heal the burns and just, well, stop the flames that now licking the forest floor. Meanwhile, while Asta was dealing with the entire army of the Eye of the Midnight Sun, the other Black Bulls and their allies would have headed over to the Diamond Kingdom's army, as they were battling Mars as well as his forces. This would be where Ladros being the guy that Asta originally defeated by using his anti-magic, in the original would have fought. However, as Fonzel is about to charge the Diamond Kingdom's army, suddenly Asta would turn, his eyes hollow and shocked, as he had just finished wiping out his army before he sensed this incredible magic power. What is that? Asta be saying, as we see the Queen having released her trump card. As on the battlefield, we can hear him say, "Fox Hunt." Suddenly, all of the hearts of the Diamond Kingdom's army would be ripped out, their magic power stripped, as we see a man standing there, with long, shaggy white hair and ripped red clothing. A man from the Kingdom of Witches? I thought men weren't even allowed in there, Vanessa be thinking, having seen him come out of the forest just for a flash before he defeated them all. Mars and Ladros would be shocked, having barely avoided the attack with scratches over their chests, so deep that they could actually see one of their ribs. Ladros would be amazed and also horrified that he almost died, wondering who this strong fighter is. The man would turn around with his crimson eyes, licking his long, sharp teeth covered with blood, as he then turns saying, "Well, I guess I missed you, huh? I'm Bandit Bon, and I'm here to party." You guys have been wondering where the 7 Deadly Sins are, and we just ran into our first one, that being the immortal himself, Bon, the Bandit King. If you guys want to see the Fox Sin of Greed in the next episode, along with Asta, his now former captain's son, then make sure to get this video to 300 likes, and I'll start working on the next part as soon as I can. So I hope you guys are excited for that. I have a lot of questions. You guys are probably now thinking, why is Bon in the Forest of Witches, and why does the Queen of Witches have him, and how does the Queen know Meliodas, and what is going on? So I hope you guys are ready for that next time. I'm pretty excited to explain everything and get more into the lore of this universe that I've been constructing for 10 parts now. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.